Droneshield ASX DRO on the Australian Stock Exchange, and in North America, DRSHF is a high-tech company specialising in protecting critical infrastructure, defence and communications. And joining me is the CEO, Oleg Vornik. Hello, Oleg.
Thanks for having me, Tim.
Now, yesterday you had some interesting news out about starting to work in Brazil, but just give us an outline of the company. I know you're in high-tech security products, working with defence personnel. Just give us an outline of what the company is right into right now.
Droneshield is a defense technology company focused on stopping drones doing bad things. So as the drone technology evolves, drones are being increasingly used by terrorists as well as state actors to do surveillance, whether it's on battlefield or around critical infrastructure or other sensitive locations, and also deliver dangerous payloads. So think about bombs, chemical, biological substances, etc. So we developed a sophisticated suite of detection and safe defeat. When I say safe, I mean nothing that we make harms a human or even harms a drone for that matter, rather safely lands them or swarm of drones. And now we've been deploying across dozens of countries. We have our headquarters in Sydney, we manufacture here, and also we have presence in the US, in Virginia office, as well as small presence in the UK and in-country partners in about 120 countries around the world selling our products.
So this is something that's coming into a varied amount of uses. I mean, drones are now invading people's personal space. They're, industrial threats, they're IP threats. What's the demand coming from those different industries for these kind of defense products?
We're seeing demand really come from a wide variety of places. However, it's important to say that the laws in most countries prevent people like you and I to shooting down or otherwise neutralizing drones, because drones are considered on same footing as full-size aircraft. So just because a helicopter, for example, happens to be hovering above your house, it doesn't unfortunately give you a right to come out and take down that aircraft. So drone is treated on the same legal basis. So because of that, we have government customers such as military, law enforcement, and intelligence agencies comprising most of our customer sets. And we're certainly seeing demand rise quite rapidly as more and more drones take the skies.
So I guess a lot of governments and institutions are quite nervous about this invasion. And what is the perception of these kind of tensions globally?
We live in an increasingly uncertain world, Tim. If you speak to the Australian defense, even say 5, 10 years ago, that tell you that we have at least 30 years to prepare for the next war. While if you talk to defense today, that tell you that we might have as little as less than 10 years to prepare for the next conflict. And the thing about being at the end of the world or at the end of a very long supply chain is there's a realization that, say, if there's a major conflict in the region or globally and the drawbridge goes up, we will certainly receive sympathy from our allies, but we need to have areas that we are self-sufficient in because things may not get to us. So, for example, if China comes into Coral Sea, that will cut us off from a lot of the supply routes from the US, and then what do you do? So, in response, Australia evolved to become quite a major defense procurer in their own way. So, we are 12th largest defense spender globally, which is quite a lot for a country of 25 people. And increasingly, the focus is on having local manufacturing as well as R&D in key priority areas. So with a lot of the conflict becoming more like what you'd call gray zone conflict. So it's not about countries attacking each other with tanks and missiles, because nobody wants an escalation that will ultimately lead to a nuclear conflict, which of course is in nobody's interest. There is more like an underhanded kind of warfare, whether it's China dredging around Taiwan or creating islands with airfields in the middle of um, the ocean, or any other similar kind of means, potentially attacking undersea cables. And a big part of that asymmetric warfare is what you call spectrum dominance. So a lot of things on the battlefield today emit energy, either because that's how they operate or they deliberately emit energy to disrupt. So we developed ways through our work with drones, and small drones, of course, on their own are emitters of energy in pretty sophisticated ways, to then sort of take our learnings and use artificial intelligence algorithms to detect and identify and track never seen before emitters in a battle space, to enable Australian defense that high degree of spectrum dominance. And that is fairly hardware agnostic. So the defense keeps the hardware that they already have, and effectively uses us as an additional layer of software capability. And then, of course, drones themselves are increasingly, and I'm talking about small drones, being increasingly used in conflict. So we've seen Russia use drones extensively, including very small drones, kind of like what you buy in JB Hi-Fi, in the conflict in eastern Ukraine. We've seen Azerbaijan use Turkish drones extensively in conflict in Armenia, and other examples. So the idea there is counter drone is no longer a niche field of curiosity, but a core part of how you prepare for especially asymmetric kind of conflict today.
I've seen footage on news reports of drones being deployed en masse out of the back of a large aircraft. And does your technology kind of looking at providing protection against that sort of a mass deployment of drones, rather than just say, bring down a single drone? Does it have that capability? Are you looking at that more advanced? And I guess from someone who doesn't normally think about how we're going to work, and with the military and defence, you're in that game. So you're probably seeing a lot of situations that would be quite scary to the normal person. But you're looking at applying your technology in that defence role to protect. So going back to that question I asked, what about a deployment of, a large scale drone deployment? How would your technology deal with that?
We can handle swarms as well as handling single drones. So swarm technology has evolved substantially over the recent years. So it started very simply with five guys with five drones, and you call it a swarm. Then it began as one guy controlling five swarms. And then it evolved into what you're describing now, which is there's nobody controlling the swarm. You have smart drones basically telling kind of ordinary drones what to do, and they all fly in a formation and they're fairly independent from each other, which is pretty scary if you think about it. So we work on technologies that can separate between those kind of smart drones and dumber drones, and deal with swarms. Now, one thing is that we are working in this kind of capability only with Australia and its allies, like the US, the UK, and others. So technology is tightly export controlled, and only available for our defense and partner nations. But it's certainly emerging field. We often think about counter drone like an antivirus sort of situation, except you have the physical part to it as well of the actual drone. So as the drones get smarter, you need ways of dealing with it. Now, in terms of how we deal with it, we employ multi-sensor approach. So we use a combination of radio frequency sensors, which effectively look for, in this case, radio frequency connections between the master drones and the slave drones as they talk to each other and give each other directions and feedback. We use smart radars, which are effectively motion detectors in the sky. And the thing about drones is classic radars, which rely on large, shiny, reflective objects like big aircraft or helicopters, don't work against small plastic objects like drones flying close to the ground. So you need a completely different radar technology to deal with that. Some people look for blades, which is again in my mind a short-lived thing, because over time blades will become enclosed for safety reasons, if nothing else. So that will change a lot of that micro Doppler approach. We spend a lot of time on artificial intelligence capabilities in the optics and thermal space that we developed under the ground from Australian Defence, working in collaboration with the University of Technology, Sydney. So what it basically is when a camera, and it can be a variety of cameras, it's hardware agnostic, sees a drone even as a little sort of speck on far away on the screen, it can categorize it that it's a particular drone model and even look at its payload and tell you how far it is. So pretty advanced optical algorithms. And also over time, the technology can be adapted to other things in a battlefield like armed shooter detection or other fast moving objects. So when we talk about object tracking, it's quite interesting. So tracking things like humans and vehicles is an old hat, right? It's been around for quite some time. There's kind of nothing complex, no complexity to it. But tracking what is a dinner plate size object moving 20 meters a second, white object against white cloud in potentially very complex environment of buildings and moving things is very, very hard. And reliably doing so is what makes our system unique, and also being able to detect never seen before threats, which is the whole premise of artificial intelligence capability, rather than just matching against the database of threats. And then on top of all that, so RF, radar, and optical slash thermal or slash infrared, we also use acoustic detection as well. So as drones move, their blades, their engines make noise, and often, while acoustics is not a good primary method of detecting drones because it cannot be as precise as other sensors, it can certainly save you when the drone can be in a particular stealth mode when nothing else works, but the drone still makes noise as it moves. So that kind of multi-layered detection gives you high probability that you're going to pick up and track the drone. And the same thing applies for defeat. So while smart jamming, which is effectively severing the drone from its environment, from its controller or other drones from satellite, is in our opinion, the best way to deal with a drone. There are other technologies available for particular situations, such as lasers and nets. And I mean, we don't really support using eagles for drone defense, but people do that too.
I have seen those eagles, trained eagles to capture them. I often wondered, an eagle would get chopped to bits when its claws try to get around some of those propellers.
Animal cruelty, that's right. That's right.
Yeah. That's amazing. Now, listen, there's so much, this opens up so much, so many ideas, You've got a wide array of equipment too, from drone guns to sensing equipment, mobile-based units. Do you have competitors in this space that are anywhere near where you're at with this technology?
We have competitors in individual segments. Right. It's funny because about 6 years ago when we started, there was virtually nobody in our field. So it was literally just us. And the hardest thing was explaining to people that what we're supplying was indeed something that they needed. So as the technology, or as the whole area started to heat up and more customers started to look for counter drone solutions, we're starting to see competitors pop up. Now, the difference between us and them is several-fold. One, we were one of the original pioneers in the industry. We had basically longer time at it. For us, this is a full-time job. So a lot of other people in the counter-drone space tend to focus on other stuff. And this is kind of their part-time gig, so to speak. While for us, this is our main focus. So as a result, the products tend to be better. Further detection, less false alarms, more accurate, etc. And also different products for different missions. So you can products which are body worn, vehicle based, fixed site, etc. Our competitors tend to be single product companies, and also tend to be very regionally based. So for any one of our products, we might have 2 or 3 people in a tender, but then we don't see them for a different class of a product or a different geography. So the reason why we do this, the reason why we operate in 120 countries around the world, the reason why we have a suite of products, even though it's harder, is because that increases the amount of deployments. So two most common questions that people ask as new customers is, well, how much, and also who else is using your products? So having increased base of deployments makes it easy to sell. And also ultimately a lot of it is same sort of tech packaged in a different sort of thing. So it's easier to build a second and the third type of a product. Say, for example, you build the fixed site product, well, you can build a portable product. It's just a slightly different packaging.
So we've been talking about a lot of things. Fundamentally, it's a Pandora's box of assorted things here. Both on a defence role, both and industrial applications. But you mentioned earlier in our discussion about a military threat. A lot closer than we think. How will Droneshield be involved in that kind of activity?
So if you have enemy using drones for reconnaissance or payload delivery, whether it's individual drones or swarms, if you have enemy on more in the kind of a classic battlefield situation, using devices that emit energy, and most stuff today emits energy, right? So if you think about radars, jammers, radios, they all emit energy across their varied spectrums. So ability to listen, recognize, track those devices, all of that is what we specialize in.
Okay, is there anything coming up in the pipeline that investors in Droneshield may be interested in your short-term pipeline? Anything? I mean, last week was Brazil. You've just done a deal in Brazil with the telecommunications people there. Anything else on the pipeline that would be of interest to investors?
We talked about a $200 million pipeline in our half-year presentation about 2 weeks ago. We are actively chasing a number of those opportunities, and we believe that a few of them would be at a signing stage in a fairly near future, as we mentioned in the presentation. So there are probably a dozen different near-term larger sales possibilities. Each one of them, I think, can be a meaningful trigger to the share price. When we first started, a lot of things, I guess, were meaningful news to investors, like new products and opening new markets and whatnot. I think we're at a more mature stage right now where, frankly, my sense is the main thing that matters to investors is large sales. And that's what we're focusing on, and we'll announce them as soon as we sign them.
Oleg Vornik, CEO of Droneshield Limited on the Australian Stock Exchange's DRO, in North America, DRSHF. Thank you very much, sir, for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, Tim.